Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. We're all getting used to a new normal with distance and e-learning, and we hope you and your families are safe and well. This webinar will help you find your why, your reason for serving and getting involved. Knowing about your why is the first step in understanding how you achieve your organization's goals, your personal goals, especially if you're a young person, and will help you stay motivated and courageous through every step of your service learning journey. Just a few notes about this webinar. We are taping this and we'll post it on the Service Learning Network to share with others. It should run about 30 minutes. And we're thrilled that you're with us today and hope that you check out other webinars that NYLC has hosted and posts on our Service Learning Network. My name is Julie Rogers Bascom, and I'm the Director of Training and Leadership Development at NYLC. We at NYLC envision a world where all young people become civically informed and engaged global citizens by participating in service learning as part of their educational experience. We work with educators, both in the classroom and after school. We work with students and community leaders and businesses to incorporate peace, justice, and sustainability into the fabric of all education systems by asking students to be of service to their community as part of their educational experience, to learn, to lead, and to grow with service learning. I believe that young people have the energy, enthusiasm, and ability to create change. And when we use service learning connected to hope for outcomes, they become the leaders we hope to see in the world. I'd like to introduce you to my friend Carmen, who is on the Youth Advisory Council. Carmen?
Hi, everyone. My name is Carmen, and I'm on NYLC's Youth Advisory Council. We are a group of young people from across the nation who are working to promote service learning in our schools, our communities, and across the U.S. Currently, we're working on a project to promote education equity across the nation called Youth for Education. We will let you know more details about that later, but essentially what we do as a group is we work with NYLC to support them however we can and learn ourselves. So who are you? You can comment in the chat box or just reflect for a bit. What is your role in your program? Are you a student, a teacher, administrator, etc.? This is really important in understanding sort of how much power you have and what role you play in your community and your program, and as such, kind of how you can approach service learning. So we have a few norms at NYLC. These are basically standards that we all agree to when we are in a space together. So during this webinar, we will agree to stay engaged, listen generously, speak your truth, and experience discomfort. And so these are necessary just to sort of make sure that we're making the most of our experience and interacting with one another as well as we can, staying respectful, engaged, and learning. So the goals of this webinar, Finding Your Why, are to explain what service learning is and why we as an organization choose to promote it and how you can use it, in addition to your why. So why you should use this service learning and how you can put your passions into projects.
I'm going to start with first understanding what community service is. I think there's out there in the world of education and working with young people and working in service capacity, I think there is some confusion over what community service is and what service learning is. So let's just start with some of the definitions that we use. I like to say that community service is an activity that engages people in addressing needs of their schools and their community. Community service is good and important work, but there are some differences between service learning and community service. So how do you define service learning in your organization? If you do a Google search, you'll find about 250 different definitions of what service learning is. Here at NYLC, we define service learning as an approach to teaching and learning in which students use civic and academic knowledge and skills to address genuine community needs. Now notice that there's some similarities between that definition. But what's different about service learning are that it is a process. It is not a project. And one of the ways we distinguish this is we often talk about the 4 stages of service learning. Stage 1 is really identifying desired results. What do you hope young people and the community will learn from being engaged in this process? We determine, stage 2, we determine what does that look like if we reach those adults or those outcomes. Stage 3 is the IPARD student learning cycle. You see this icon on the right of your screen. IPARD is where it's the guts, it's the ready, set, go. It's the way that we take action. And described quickly, the 5 steps in this stage are investigation. We need to investigate and know more about the problem and the concepts and the constructs out in the community around the particular issue before we can really take action. We need to do some planning and preparing. Who do we need to talk to? Who needs to know about this problem? How can we engage more people? What's our timeline? What's our budget? Who else can we get engaged? Then A stands for action. What kind of action are we going to take? And we like to talk about different types of action. We have creating awareness, being of service, advocacy, and philanthropy. Those are all types of action. Reflection is something we do before, during, and after the service or the action. And then the last part of this stage, the D, stands for demonstration. And this is really when we share with others what was the problem, how did we approach solving that problem, what were our outcomes, and what still needs to be done. So that again is that 3rd stage of service learning, and many people who are doing service learning use that acronym, the IPARD cycle. Our last stage of service learning is self-assessment. This is another way that we look at what happened, what did we do, how did we solve the problem, what else needs to be done, how did we document, who else needs to know about it, and what are our next steps. Now, again, this slide just tells you a little bit more about what some of the differences are between community service or volunteering and service learning. The purpose of community service, again, good and important work, meets the needs of others in the community, where the purpose of service learning is to meet the community needs, but also adding on some of those hoped for youth outcomes, whether it be academic learning, whether it be leadership or character development, or some other hope for outcomes for young people. Community service can be a one-time event or a recurring commitment to volunteer, whereas service learning really follows a process. I always talk about it's a process, not a project, to make sure that both the service goals and learning goals are met. And again, one of the differences between community service and volunteering and service learning is that community service may or may not involve critical reflection. And in service learning, that's really key because you're connecting it to what you hope will be some outcomes for young people. And we know with the brain research that that we continually and eagerly are learning that the reflection really helps put that learning deeper into the brains and academic outcomes for young people. Now, I like to think about kind of why do we use service learning? I've talked a lot about outcomes and the why of service learning. If you are an adult, one of the reasons we might use service learning are because of youth outcomes. A national study of Learn and Serve America programs, which was a federal service learning initiative, showed that effective service learning develops students' personal and social responsibility. It improves grades and increases attendance. Some of the other outcomes for youth are social emotional learning outcomes and competencies like self-awareness and social awareness and relationship skills. Some of our hope for youth outcomes might be the academic and cognitive development, such as standards in K-12 and in out-of-school time. And then another outcome might be some of those civic engagement competencies, like identifying and analyzing public problems, or deliberating with others about how to define and address issues. Another outcome that an adult might have for using service learning might be how it impacts the community. Maybe one of your hoped for outcomes is to improve the understanding of social responsibility. Or maybe it's really meeting community needs or building collaborative partnerships between schools and other institutions. And it's also a way to engage parents and other adults in supporting youth learning. I think that one of my whys of service learning is that it really changes the perspective about of young people. We hear a lot, oh, kids these days, dot, dot, dot. I like to think about, oh, kids these days, because I see the impact that our young people are having in our community. And so it's really changing the narrative of how our community views young people and their ability to contribute. I think the last thought that I would leave you with in terms of why to use service learning from an adult perspective are some of your program outcomes. What are your hope for program outcomes of using service learning? I'm doing a lot of work with people in the after school and the out of school space in using service learning as a strategy. And we see that programs are offering service learning as a way to engage young people that maybe they haven't been engaged with in the after school space before. So we really see it as a way for programs to engage young people in ways that they hadn't looked at it before. I'd like to ask you, Carmen, sort of why would students, what is the why of service learning for young people?
I think service learning is helpful for me because it's a unique way of, so the first part of the iPod process is investigation, which involves understanding and sort of researching your own community, creating relationships, deeper comprehension, and sort of realizing what you like and what you don't like about your community. And then the rest of the iPod process sort of empowers you to change what you don't like, turn your community into something that benefits everyone, is equitable, that you enjoy. So it both informs, educates, and empowers students. And then what I really like about service learning above both service separately and learning separately is that the reflection process sort of helps you realize what you've done and how it's changed you. So this reflection process often encourages social and emotional learning. It encourages greater relationships with your community, and it sort of helps students understand who they are in kind of tumultuous context. The other fantastic thing about service learning is that it so it connects youth with one another. Once you're empowered to make change, you talk to other students and you can all sort of come together and change your community for the better. So service learning is incredibly impactful on the community level and on the individual level because it helps you learn in sort of an unexpected, more accessible way for a lot of students. So we're about to watch a video about finding your why from Simon Sinek, who is a trained ethnographer, the author of 2 books, which are both New York Times bestsellers, and he's devoted his life to sharing his action. So he's best known for popularizing the concept of why, which is what we're talking about today, and for the talk he gave on the subject that became the second most watched TED Talk of all time. So Julie, we're gonna have to give him a run for his money later, but for now, very good video. And while you're watching this video, just keep in mind sort of why do you use service learning?
Circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do, 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done. That's how most sales is done. And that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do. We say how we're different or how we better. We expect some sort of purchase a vote, something like that. There's a new law, but it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat screen TVs. They've been making flat screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one. And Dell came out with MP3 players and PDAs. And they make great quality products, and they can make perfectly well-designed products. And nobody bought one. In fact, talking about it now, we can't even imagine buying an MP3 player from Dell. Why would you buy an MP3 player from a computer company? We do it every day. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. When we communicate from the outside in, yes, people can understand complicated information like heat and different factors directly to the tangible things we say and do. Give me all the facts and figures, and I know what all the facts and details say, but it just doesn't feel right. Why would we use that verb? It doesn't feel right. Part of the brain that controls decision making doesn't control language. And the best we can muster up is, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Or sometimes you say you're leading with your heart, or you're leading with your soul. Okay, to break it to you, there's no other body parts controlling your behavior. It's all happening here in your limbic brain, the part of the brain that controls decision making and not language. But if you don't know why you do what you do, and people respond to why you do what you do, how will you ever get people to vote for you or buy something from you, or more importantly, be loyal?
All right, so that was an insane video. Do you guys have any takeaways? You can comment them in the chat box. If not, we can have a little discussion about it right now. Julie, thoughts?
Well, one of the things that really strikes me about this video, and even though I have seen it several times, both in preparation for this webinar, but in thinking about some of the trainings that I do, if we don't understand the why of what we're doing it, then we're just going through the motions. That's why it really connects for me with regards to service learning, because it really is a way to, oh, I've got an email at the same time. It's really a way to engage young people in understanding what problems, what real community problems are, and how they can address them. What about you, Carmen? Were there some takeaways
Yeah,
for you?
Yeah, I think that it's really interesting that obviously it matters what you do, but really that if you know what you want to be doing, why you're doing something, then sort of the individual actions and projects don't matter so much. So if you can convince other people that your why is absolutely necessary and sort of a good thing, then you can all work together to do many different hows and whats, and it can be a big mix. It doesn't really matter. You don't have to focus on that details as long as you're very certain of why you're doing it.
Mm-hmm. So what is your why, Carmen?
Ooh, my why is I will use service learning so that all students get an equitable education. And that's because, actually, I'll start with the why. I believe that everyone deserves an equal opportunity to live, learn, and love. What about you, Julie?
You know, I use service learning because I believe that all young people, no matter what their background or their abilities, can be leaders and problem solvers. And I really want young people to see themselves as givers, as receivers, because we both receive when we give. Everybody has something to give. Everybody has something to receive. And I want them to see themselves as leaders and as learners.
So for me, just to elaborate a little bit, the what of my why is youth for education. So if my why is that I believe everyone deserves equity and equality, then the way that I'm trying to achieve that right now is through Youth for Education, which is a program through the National Youth Leadership Council that improves school climate by creating brave spaces for vulnerable discussion and turning that discussion into meaningful change through positive youth-adult partnerships. So the what here is many different things. It's positive youth-adult partnerships, it's discussions, it's brave spaces, and school climate. But the why is fundamentally that everyone gets an equal opportunity at an education. So the how here is really how students interact, empowering them to understand their communities and change them however they see fit. Students are the ones who know what's happening and who deserve the power to change it. And so Youth for Ed is sort of a process that empowers students to create equality in their schools so that hopefully we can have equality throughout our society. How about you, Julie?
Well, if my why is about supporting young people and my belief is that all young people can be change makers, my how is really about what we're doing here at NYLC through training, through coaching, through support, through resources. We have a wonderful service learning network that if you join, which is free, if you sign up for that, you're able to get access to materials that are going to help you engage with young people in service learning. And if you're a young person listening to this webinar, it's a way for you to walk through a service learning process and a project to engage yourself and to start seeing yourself as a service learner, as a problem solver. And that's really the what of my circle of why. It's because I want young people to see themselves as problem solvers, because I am of a generation where we really look to our young people to participate and to be part of the solution. So if you have questions, if you're looking at what kind of service learning experience you're trying to create, I encourage you to go to nylc.org and check out the resources there. You can find some links to us. If you have questions, please feel free to give us a call. I'm also wondering about next steps for you. I'd like you to think about your why and consider telling someone what your why of using service learning is. And maybe ask somebody what their why is. What is something that they are encouraged to do? Also plug this before, join the Service Learning Network. Within the Service Learning Network, we also have subgroups, listservs. We have an out-of-school time list. We have a way to connect K-12. We have a way to connect if you're a community organization. So I really encourage you to take part of this free resource for you. Also, if you registered for this Service Learning year's conference, unfortunately, we are switching gears to do a virtual National Service Learning Conference on April 16 and 17, 2020. And we've already put our plans in play for our next year's Service Learning Conference, April 8th through the 10th in New Orleans.
But the virtual conference will also be really fun. Come join us. We're going to have some more webinars. You can learn more about service learning, about your why, and really get started with this process.
Great. So here's our contact information. If you want to learn more about how you can be engaged in Youth for Ed, and I know, Carmen, are you accepting new applications and new people who they're wanting to know more about Youth for Ed?
Yes, all the time. If you go to the NYLC page, nylc.org, there's a little section that says programs. Click that, and then Youth for Ed. And there are applications open all the time. We are very open. If you apply, we will most likely accept you, because we're here to support every student in changing whatever they'd like about their community. We have resources for you, we have guidance, and with a few easy steps, you can join the program and be well on your way to changing your community through service learning.
And here again is my information. Again, my name is Julie Rogers Bascom, and I'd love to hear from you. If you want to know more about how you can engage with service learning, I would love to have a conversation with you, point you in the right direction, and talk with you further about how you might be able to use this strategy in your classroom, in your program, in your community. Thank you all for being a part of this webinar. Carmen, you are a joy to work with. I am so lucky to have you as a partner. And we look forward to connecting with many of you in the future. Thanks for joining us.
Good night.